Hey guys, welcome to She Knows Arsenal. This is your second stream of the day. Make sure you guys are liking this video and subscribing to the channel and getting in the chat and letting me know how you guys are thinking and feeling. I know I glitched right there. I saw it. But listen, guys, we have a couple of things to talk about on this evening show, wherever you guys are watching. It's afternoon for me. Maybe it's evening for you. But listen, I am feeling a little bit okay. I feel some type of way for several different reasons. So, Arsenal are said to be in the loan market and primarily in the loan market for this January transfer window. And I know that's going to come. I think some Arsenal fans are going to be quite disappointed with that because there's kind of like this feeling, I feel like, among some Arsenal fans that we need a major signing. We need a major striker signing. That's not really what I'm upset by. That's not really what I'm feeling some type of way about. I'm feeling some type of way about this report coming out from the Daily Mail that Arsenal complained to PGMOL over the rough treatment of Bukayo Saka by opponents, with their star man the third most fouled player in the Premier League in 2023. And so this comes out and obviously it makes it seem like Arsenal are just complaining about everything and whatever. But I think Arsenal bringing it to PGMOL's attention that Saka is pretty much manhandled on a daily basis without consequence is not that bad of a thing. But also the way that it's worded makes it seem as though Arsenal are the only ones who make complaints like this. But when you actually read the report, it's the entire Premier League comes together and talks about these things. And it's not just Arsenal complaining all the time. And the thing about the whole Saka thing and the rough treatment, I don't think Saka is being I don't think the way Saka's treated is normal. I really don't think it is. I think he is a couple of years ago, I was watching ESPN, unfortunately, and one of the pundits on there, Steve Nicol, was saying that, oh, that Saka lad, he likes to roll around a lot and he likes to come off the pitch. I'm sorry, but anybody that knows Bukayo Saka, he's not a flopper or anything like that. And he definitely doesn't like to come off the pitch. He's one of the most consistent players and rarely ever takes a day off. So for him to say that, I just feel like when you start to say things like that, you shape a narrative around a player and inevitably they end up being treated differently than others. And I don't think Saka's treated right. I think one of the things is he gets kicked a lot. He gets kicked more than many other players. He's the third most fouled player in the league. But what we don't usually see is the yellow cards and the red cards given for the consistent fouling. And I think that's where Arsenal are probably most aggrieved is you can't really stop other players from fouling Saka, but the consequence of consistently fouling somebody and going through the back of them and sandwiching them and kicking their ankles and their Achilles and slamming them down and all that kind of stuff has to be that they're given yellow cards. And when they accumulate more yellow cards, that means that you can't tackle him anymore. And then, basically the Ben White effect. Ben White, every time he plays against Rashford, he gets a yellow card in the first 10 minutes of the game. And then boom, Ben White cannot touch Rashford for the rest of the game. We don't ever really get that. Saka can get fouled 5, 6, 7, 8 times. And the opposition player doesn't get any sort of yellow, And I do think it's a little bit disingenuous to put this out here as though, Arsenal are calling up PGMOL and saying, stop fouling Saka, because that's not what they said. In fact, they said that it is understood that that it was an accumulation of incidents which prompted Arsenal to highlight that, in their opinion, opponents are free to clatter the winger without an initial punishment in the Premier League matches. The matter was brought up as a part of a wider conversation earlier this season with the league's refereeing body, dialogue which happens between all of the clubs and the body. Arsenal are believed to have said that the referee should issue a yellow card to offender after the first strong foul on the 22-year-old rather than wait for the second infringement. And so, again, it's just something that's a normal protocol. Everybody is a part of these conversations, but yet and still they make it seem like Arsenal are just out here complaining. But the treatment of Saka is absolutely insane, and he gets kicked to death all the time, and there's never any repercussions for it. And that pisses me off so much. But Obviously, we're going to talk about the loans and some more transfer news, but I just had to talk about that first because it just irritates me so much that they act like Arsenal are just out here complaining, and they're definitely not. So let's see who's all in here. Set, thank you so much for your super chat. Says if Arteta doesn't win a Premier League or Champions League, he is done. Maybe amongst the fans, but I'll be really honest with you. I don't think Arteta's under any sort of pressure. I think he'll get another window. I think he could literally finish anywhere in the Premier League this season and nothing would happen. I don't think there's an expectation or any sort of pressure to win the Premier League or the Champions League. In fact, nobody at the club ever talks about it. You know, I was listening to Mo Salah talk the other day, and they asked him about the Premier League, and he said they're desperate to win it. I don't think I've ever heard an Arsenal player or even Mikel Arteta say they're desperate to win anything. The narrative around the club is always we want to get better, we want to compete, but it's never that we want to win. And so I don't think they are pushing the narrative that Arsenal need to win anything. They're going through this slow process where there's never any real pressure to do anything. And I really think Arsenal being really close to winning the title last season put a lot more like, oh my gosh, like we're a lot better than maybe they thought we were. Yeah, buddy, we're much better than you thought. So we need to start winning things, like be serious. But I wonder what this long-term plan always was. Oh shit, they're in. Hold on. Shoot. Oh, you guys, I'm watching Girona and Atletico, and this is a really good game. And I think I'm on loan to Girona for a season because they're fun to watch. But I don't think there's any pressure for them to win anything. I really do think it's like we're in this process, and after a couple of years of sustaining top four status, then we'll start to really try to push whatever. So even though maybe the fans are not happy. I know a lot of fans are starting to get frustrated with Mikel Arteta, which is natural. But in terms of the club turning on Mikel Arteta, I think it'll take a lot. I think it'll take a lot. Matt says Arsenal have money, but once again, it's just the fans lowering the standards and expectations. How are the fans lowering the standards and expectations? I'm trying to understand what that means. Oh, they scored again, 3-1. I'm trying to understand. So Arsenal have money, but once again, it's just Arsenal. It's just fans lowering the standards and expectations. What does that mean? Because are you talking about me because I'm saying loans only, or I don't understand because a lot of Arsenal fans feel like Arsenal need to go out there and buy a striker. Arsenal need to go out there and buy a midfielder. They need to shit or get off the pot. So I'm trying to understand how you get from Arsenal have money, which fundamentally they do not have the money to spend for FFP. I don't know if you guys like FFP is not just some like you have to adhere to a certain level of standards. Like you have to sell a certain amount after you buy a certain amount. You have to stand within the regulations. And so Arsenal don't have the money to spend. And I don't know what the fans could do at this stage to do anything different to up the standards. Because if anything, the fans have higher standards in the club because they're asking for a striker and stuff like this now in order to win the Premier League, where the club seems actually more comfortable in just going with what they got. So I'm interested to know or understand why you think it's the fans' fault that they're lowering the standards when it's actually the fans that are asking for a striker. Steve says, hey, Jess, I feel the window is not going to balance out the performance dip we've had most of the season. Well, let's put things in perspective just a little bit. I think had we beat Fulham, what would be a point behind Liverpool? I think if we had beat either West Ham or Fulham, I think we'd have less of these conversations. I think the dip is nothing is ever as good or as bad as you think. I don't think we were ever as good as people were making it seem a couple of weeks ago, but I don't think we're anywhere near as bad as people are saying that we are right now. So this dip, I don't think is so much about signings. I think the dip is actually more about playing players that are out of form, playing players that are injured, and Arteta's tactics more than anything, because fundamentally this team is very similar to last season. Beyond Declan Rice and Kai Havertz, everything else is pretty much the same, but the tactics are really not suiting the players, and we're playing a style that's a little bit more, it's slower, it's more controlled, and it's not allowing our better players to get into good positions and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't suit our better players. And so I don't actually think that a signing is like, I think we could actually be at the top of the table with better tactics. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility for Arsenal to perform better than they are right now without a signing. But a signing, I do think would help, just in case things don't come together. But I think most of our problems, beyond, certain players being injured, and there's nothing you really can do about that, is Arteta's tactics and his inflexibility. You know, I don't know what else to really say. It's not like a signing. You see what I'm saying? Like, I don't think the dip is as bad as people are making out to seem, because had we had beat Fulham, we'd be 1 point behind Liverpool, or two, or something like that. So, yeah, I get what you're saying. But I really do think Arteta needs to take that January window, and think about his tactics. Because, again, what I've been saying for the last couple of weeks is it's not just the squad players either. It's he's not getting enough out of what he has right now. He could get so much more out of what he has right now. He's not getting anywhere near the maximum. We know the maximum out of the group that he had last season. He was getting almost the maximum out of that, but he's not getting anywhere near the maximum out of the group right now. So he has to do a lot more with what he has. But a signing would definitely help. It just depends on what signing we can get. Arsenal are talking about loans, and loans don't necessarily sound that exciting, and Arsenal don't have a good record with loans. We really don't. We don't have a good record with loans, like short-term loans. I think Odegaard was probably like our best loan signing, because he ended up being like a long-term target turned, into a full-term signing through a loan, so that was probably the best one that we've had. But beyond that, our loans have not been amazing. But I don't think our Arsenal are necessarily creative enough. I don't think you see other teams being able to figure out ways to find decent loan signings. I think our strategies, like scouting wise, is very basic. If we can't go out there and overspend on a Premier League player, we ain't getting them. Period. We will overspend on Tony. We will overspend on Kai. We'll overspend on Premier League players. But if we can't do that, our finesse is not really finessing. We are not very score. Ooh! Wow. The goal that Murata just scored, insane. I hope you guys are watch me, but also if you have like a phone or something like that where you can watch this on the side, child, y'all need to be watching this game, because this is 5 goals in the first half between Atletico and Girona. Great game. But yeah, I don't know. Let's see what else you guys are saying. Oh no, but I was talking about the loans. So loans are never really that interesting, but Arsenal could be a little bit more creative and find a player to loan. I don't think it's just there's no one to loan. Like, there's no way we can bring anybody in. Arsenal are not creative. They're not creative. Their failsafe is always go out and get a Premier League player and overspend on them, instead of go try to find something a little bit more creative. We don't ever do that. But the club are keeping their eyes open when it comes to potential transfers this month, given FFP restrictions. So going back to the comment I made earlier, is that Arsenal have money is kind of like one of those statements that don't take into account that there are restrictions and you have to keep it all the way freaking for real. They cannot spend. What do you want them to do? Is break the rules? Like, we're not going to break the rules. They may look at the loan market if they want to recruit. Arsenal have no plans to allow Aaron Ramsdale to leave in this window, and it would take an astronomical bid for them to even consider it. Arsenal will not be able to do any big deals in January, but are making plans ahead for the summer window, which is kind of like code for we're not doing anything. When they start talking about the summer window, what can you do? Atletico just scored again, you guys. Atletico just scored again. It's 3-3. They just scored 2 goals in like 1 minute. That was insane. Arsenal are also likely to move for a winger and a center forward, with Neto and Ivan Toney among possible targets. I think that's more in the summer. Arsenal are prioritizing a move for a left back in the January transfer window. Gunners boss Mikel Arteta is likely to have to settle for a loan deal, but the club have put feelers out to try to make a signing in this month that position their number one priority. So that's like the new word on the street. Oh, they called it offside. That stinks so much. Either way, this is such a good game. 5 goals in the first half. Let's be serious. That's a really, really good game. But Forefront says Murata, ice cold finish. Leopold says Arsenal needs to send people to AFCON. Here to there says, and people say Simeone is all boring, dire football. I mean, before it was for sure. Let's not pretend as though he's always been super exciting, okay? But this is a really good game. Social Join says that's what we need, a striker that runs in behind. Sesko is so much of that Murata mold. Get a direct striker and we get the attack variety. Yeah, sometimes you do watch other teams play, and I feel like you start to look at the way that we play and I'm like, we definitely do look like we're afraid to do anything direct or open up because we're so afraid to concede, but we're conceding anyway, you know? And I think we could play a more expansive style and hit teams in behind a little bit more if we were willing to take those risks, but we have too many players that stand on the ball and recycle possession instead of try to hit the ball first time or hit it early into the channels. And it's just one of those things that it's a feature of Arteta's play that we just are not very direct. We want to do all these really intricate passes that go forwards and backwards and sideways and stuff like that, but we never just do like the direct thing, which is kind of annoying, you know? But yeah, I think that, listen, reading all of that, I can understand why Arsenal want to look at the loan market. And the thing about wanting to look at the loan market is because they don't want to sell anybody. If they were willing to sell the likes of Nketiah and Reece Nelson and Ramsdale and ESR, then they would have the money to bring in somebody permanently. But because Arsenal are too stubborn and afraid to make big moves in January and like get rid of players, especially even fringe players, they're going to opt for a loan. And a loan for me is the scared choice. It's the easy choice. It's the easiest way. Goal. Oh my gosh, how does he hit it over? But it's the easiest way to, at the end of the window, say we couldn't find a decent loan, right? And so I'm already preparing myself for Arsenal not doing anything. And the left back situation is really interesting to me because I think Arsenal need to really look at the amount of players that we brought in and re-signed in that position and how none of them seem to be making the mark. None of them seem to really be doing it correctly. And we continuously bring players in that position. Now, Arsenal may be considering that left back solution because maybe Zinchenko's scan didn't come back well. Remember when I told you guys yesterday that Zinchenko has sustained like the same calf injury every single season? Well, the first time that the first time he had that calf injury, it kept him out for 3 months. Remember, he didn't even do preseason because he was coming back from that calf injury. So it may be the case that the scans got done and they did not go well. And so Arsenal will look for a left back. But my problem with that is that you have Kivior there that you bought, and he's not good there. That even if you do move him to left-sided center back or don't use him, that needs to be something that's marked down as a waste of money. You can't be bringing in players that you don't trust at left-sided center back or you don't trust at left back. And then when you need them, you can't trust them. Like, you can't keep wasting money, right? We bought Nuno Tavares to play in that position as well. I feel like people forgot all about him. He's nowhere to be seen. Timber was bought there. Tomiyasu plays there and he's always injured. Like, what are we doing? How many times are we going to buy a left back or bring in a left back in? The fact that we need another left back means that we can't move for any other signings. We can't get a loan deal for a midfielder, a loan deal for an attacker. And I'm going to be very, very interested to see what other teams in the Premier League do in this January transfer window. Because if other teams loan in decent signings, it's going to look really, really bad on Arsenal. Because I know that their main thing is always they need the perfect signing. But how many perfect signings have you guys actually gotten? You guys are always talking about you need to make sure that you get the right signing, the perfect signing. Kivior wasn't the perfect signing. Fabio Vieira is not the perfect signing. So this perfect signing nonsense for me is just a way of basically saying I don't want to do it, but I'm going to pretend like I'm doing it, pretend like I'm looking for it. And then when I can't find it, then don't do anything. Arsenal are not willing to make big decisions in January in order to get them where they want to go. They will always take the easy way out. A loan maybe is the easy way out as far as I'm concerned. But that's what they're talking about. But there's just, how many left backs are we going to bring in? How many times is this going to be a topic of conversation? How many times are we going to be looking for this player? being linked to Gonzalo Inacio as well as Jarrell Hato, when you already have 4 players that can play in that position, just feels like we're wasting resources in one position when we maybe just need to say, fuck it. If we can't deal with that situation, we'll figure it out. Arteta will stop playing Kivior like Zinchenko and put his arm around him and play simple tactics so that he can play well, or bring in Lino Sousa or somebody like that to play that position and fucking get a midfielder and attacker. Maybe try to do that. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying. Like, all I'm saying is that, like, attributing more resources to a position that you've already bought 4 players for feels very, very wasteful. And we need other positions to look at. We really do. Kenneth says, might be recalling loan players. Yeah, we could recall Nuno Tavares. Like, that could be fun, or not. I've heard a lot of people talking about Tierney. I talked about this earlier. He's already missed 9 games for Real Sociedad. And as much as I like Tierney, I don't think Arteta is going to switch his tactics to suit Tierney. He didn't want him here. So recalling him, I feel like Arteta seems to do things that are like almost like trying to prove a point. And I know that that doesn't sound nice, and maybe that feels like projecting, or maybe I'm just being emotional about us not playing well right now. But it does sometimes feel like Arteta tries to make a point with players that he doesn't want. So he plays them in positions that he knows they're not going to do well in. And then when they fail, he hooks them and then goes, see, that's why I don't like that guy. He's already done that with Tierney. So to bring him off of loan, recall him, and for Arteta to inevitably, when he has to use him, make him invert like Zinchenko, feels like stepping backwards again. And like it's not going to solve any of our problems, because inevitably he's either going to be rendered useless like everybody else that plays left back outside of Zinchenko, or Arteta's not going to play him, or he's going to get injured. So I hear you guys about maybe bringing Tierney back and recalling him. It would be a feel good factor, because I think a lot of people mostly want him back because they just are upset about the way that he left. It wasn't too long ago where people expected Tierney to be our captain. So people are emotionally attached to Tierney. I think we need to allow him to continue on loan. Hopefully he looks good at Real Sociedad and we can get as big of a fee as possible. But bringing him back to Arsenal is a surefire way of ensuring that we won't get a fee for him. Because Arteta will do one, he'll either fuck him over on the pitch and make him do things that don't make him look good, or he just won't play him. Like, you know what I mean? And so for me, that's not the best thing to do. But I understand why people want him back. Nostradamus said he played a full 90-minute yesterday. But again, my point stands. He missed 9 games. So even if he's playing now, what do we know about Tierney more than anything? Is that there's always an injury around the corner. And so just because Tomiyasu played 4 games in a row, he got injured right after that. So like it really doesn't mean anything. Tierney is injury prone, so he's going to get injured again. And so it doesn't really make sense to me to bring him back in, because when he gets that injury, don't talk to me. Don't talk to me. TJ Emerson says Tierney has been injured less than Zinchenko, you Muppets. Doesn't mean that Tierney is not injury prone. And also Zinchenko, the difference between Zinchenko and Tierney is that when Zinchenko plays for us, we look better. And when Tierney plays for us, Arteta makes him invert and then he looks terrible. So even if Zinchenko is more injury prone than Tierney, let's be serious. Like, who's the better player? Who gives us more? Zinchenko does. So yeah. And that's like Tierney was phased out. The whole Tierney thing is emotional for me. It's more based on the fact that people like Tierney and they don't like the way that he was like moved on. Like that's really all it is to me. Chris Fraser says, like the chatter saying, use Sousa and Walters. Sousa is a young Zinchenko who can actually defend, and Walters is a young version of Timber. Just try them. Mikel actually develop a player or two. And for people that have been saying like, you don't just bring in kids because then they blah, 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 they're going to make mistakes. The players that we have right now are already making mistakes. I'm just trying to understand why we don't use all the resources to our advantage. There are other teams that have worse academies than us that are integrating those players in. And that doesn't mean we need 6 or 7 of them in the team right now. It just means that for me personally, I would rather us I would rather us kind of like put Rule Walters in there and see if he can do a job. I would rather us put Lino Sousa in and see if he can do a job. But when Arteta had the opportunity to do that in a very low stakes scenario, He didn't do it. He chose to play Ben White, who is injured. He starts Cedric and then brings in Ben White, who's injured or dealing with an injury, instead of allowing him to rest. He brought Saka all the way to Eindhoven, which made no sense. So his priorities are really about players in the first team and buying more players and wasting resources than using the resources that he has at his disposal at the moment. And so, yeah, like, he's not going to develop players. In fact, I haven't really seen Arteta take a player like himself and develop them, like not a young player. Maybe Saka and Martinelli you can give him some credit for, but you could also make the argument that because they were brought through by Unai Emery and because they were good players, they would already have been good players, or maybe they'd even be better if they had a different manager. I'm just saying you can make that argument. I'm not making that argument, but I could see people saying that. But there hasn't really been a player that's come through under Mikel Arteta that's gotten better, in my opinion. There have been players where, like Saliba is always going to be Saliba. Maybe you could say Gabriel has gotten better. I'm trying to really think, because Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko were already Gabriel Jesus and Zinchenko. Thomas Partey was already Thomas Partey. Xhaka was already Xhaka. So, when you have 30-year-olds, it's really difficult to say that he's developed them. So maybe Gabriel, Ben White in the first year, or the second year. But is there been a player under Mikel Arteta where he's developed them into the player that they are? Maybe Saka and Martinelli you can give him credit for, but I haven't really seen him develop anybody. And I don't think that that's his priority. I think his priority is to continue to buy players, because he's being given carte blanche to continue to do so. And he's wasting so many resources. As bad as Nuno Tavares and Sambi ended up being, Arteta didn't even try to develop them for real. He put them in there, set them up to fail. When they failed, he said, get these guys out of here. And that was it. He didn't even try, so it's like, what the fuck? Here to there says maybe Odegaard, but Odegaard was already highly acclaimed. Yeah, for me, Odegaard is not somebody that Arteta developed. Odegaard actually developed quite a bit at Real Sociedad. That was actually where he got his spark back after Real Madrid. And then, yeah, like he has gotten better since being at Arsenal. Maybe you can give him credit for that. But from like infancy on, like from I brought you through and then you became something, there hasn't been anybody, but I don't know he's not a developmental coach. And the funny thing about that is when he came from Manchester City, one of the things that I think a lot of us anticipated from Mikel Arteta was development. I think a lot of us expected him to be able to bring in through young players and get them to become better. And actually, we haven't seen much of that. He doesn't seem to really mess with the youth like that. He doesn't really seem to want to develop players. It's almost like he wants players that are ready to go, that fit in a very specific system. And if you don't fit that system and you need development, you're cooked. You're not doing anything at Arsenal. Nostradamus says Saliba. Do you guys think Arteta developed Saliba? Genuine question. He did 2 loans somewhere else. And he was like, the French young player of the season before he came to Arsenal. After his 2 loan spells, do we think that Arteta developed Saliba? Interesting. If people think that he developed Saliba, that's very interesting to me. Paulo De Santos says Nuno Tavares was shit anyway. Even if he was, I feel like a lot of Arsenal fans still don't get the concept of just because a player may not be good enough for Arsenal long term doesn't mean that Mikel Arteta can't get more out of them than what he's been getting out of them. He basically just puts them in bad positions and discards them. We don't even get to see if they could have been developed even by 10, 15%. Do you see what I'm saying? The only player that gets continual time to develop and get better and get playing time and can play in a position that suits him is Eddie. He's the only one. No one else. Nuno Tavares was a wing back, and Arteta continuously played him in a left back position. He's not going to be able to do that. He's not a defender. For me, Nuno Tavares, I would not be surprised if he was one of those players that in youth He was a winger, but he wasn't good enough to be a winger. But he wasn't able to be developed into a left back either because he couldn't be defensive. So then when people started playing three at the back, that wing back position really suited him. A lot of wing backs are failed wingers, but they're not defensive enough to actually really nail down the left back position. But Arteta played him in the left back position. So what happened? Anytime he had to defend, he was exposed. Sambi came in. He's clearly a double pivot number 8, and Arteta played him in the single lone pivot 6 position, a position that even Thomas Partey took a couple of years to get really good at. Exposed him, discarded him, boom. Same thing is happening to Fabio Vieira and Kivior. So even if I think a lot of our feelings around some of these players are built around how Arteta has managed them, not so much about the actual talent level. And again, you don't have to be the best player in the world for a manager to get more out of you. That is how you know you have a good coach, is somebody that can take a group of players and say, okay, this is the system and everything that's going to get the most out of them. And instead of doing that, I think Mikel Arteta just says, buy me some more. Like, I need more players, Hold on. And that's just not going to work, But what are we even talking about? Midas has a question saying, what stage of the project are we supposed to start winning titles? The greatest problem with Arsenal is the owners. The Kroenkes need to go and title-hungry owners should come in. Well, if we want first of all, the Kroenkes are not selling Arsenal anytime soon. They don't really sell their sporting, like they don't sell, like, and I was reading something the other day because I commented on a post around Arteta, should he be under more pressure if he doesn't win something? And I was like, he's not under any pressure. And somebody commented under my post and said, if you know anything about Kroenke Sports and Entertainment, is that they usually go about at least 5 years with the young coach with no pressure and give them as much resources as possible before any pressure is even put on them. Arteta's in year 4, so I think fans are a little bit maybe thinking that it's really hard to get owners out. It's really hard to get owners out. This fan base does not have the togetherness and they don't have it. They don't have it. We're never going to be able to get the Kroenkes out. We're just not, so I don't know what to tell you. I think at the most we could expect is maybe if Arteta fails, for us to eventually for him to go. But in terms of getting Kroenkes out, like Arsenal the fans would have to really get real about it, and they're not going to. There's not going to be any sort of togetherness or whatever. It's really difficult to do. The Kroenkes have to decide that they want to go, and as far as I know, they don't really. They're not going anywhere. They're waiting on the Super League. That's the truth. Like all of these American owners that are kind of, not really loved by their fan bases are only really still around because they're waiting on the Super League. They know eventually it's coming. And once they can fully Americanize football, they will know that they have that forever ATM machine. And so good luck, if you think you can get the Kroenkes out when we've already had 2 Super League proposals. At one of these are going to get accepted at some stage, and it'll be the golden ticket for the likes of the Glazers and the Kroenkes to have almost like American franchises, and so we're not going to get rid of Mikel Arteta or the Kroenkes anytime soon, unless the fans just decide they're not going to go to games, they're not going to spend any money, and they're not going to do it for a long period of time. And when I was at the Emirates, yeah, there was some disappointment, but the Athletic came out with an article at the beginning of this season, and it asked like how happy are they with things at Arsenal, and 75% of the Arsenal fans that voted in that said that they were very, very happy. So to turn that tide around, 180 is going to be very, very difficult. I don't even think a season outside, like if we finish 5th, I don't think it would happen. I really don't. So yeah, I don't know what to tell y'all. I don't know what to tell y'all. I don't know what to tell you. On the volley said he would have been instructed what to develop, what to work on by the club. He's played on a consistent basis. Saliba has grown to be the player that he is today. Jay says a player, Casemiro, with trophies and big game experience, in my opinion, is needed. Not saying Casemiro is the guy, just somebody like that. The problem with bringing in players like that, though, is that Arteta does not really do well with players that have experience. My feeling on Mikel Arteta is he likes young people around him, young coaches and young players, because I think that creates an environment for him where he's kind of like the guy, right? But when he had Aubameyang in the team, when he had Ozil in the team, when he had all these older players in the team that had varying levels of experience, some had won a lot, some had not won as much, he didn't really like that as much, and he wanted them gone. And since then, we really haven't bought that many experienced players. Like if somebody like because Jorginho is somebody that was never going to start, right? And he was already on the outs with Chelsea. But if you brought in somebody like, let's say Arteta went out there and brought in Kimmich, who is also linked with Manchester City, by the way, and probably will end up there at the end of the season. But somebody like a Kimmich, he's 28 years old now, been there, done that, won Champions League, won hella shit. How long do you think it would be until Kimmich and Arteta were on the outs? I don't know what to tell you. Better players that have won things will question the they'll question whether or not this is a winning environment a lot more than young players that have never won anything before. They'll question things about the manager, like, because they've been there and done that. They know what it looks like when the manager knows what they're doing and when the environment is set up for them to win. And so I really do think that, like, I think it's weird that Arteta only has young coaches around him. I do. I think it's strange. Steve Round left, and since then it's just been Carlos Cuesta and that other young guy and AirPod Albert. But he needs somebody around him that's going to tell him no, and there's nobody around him telling him no. But that's all. That's kind of the feeling that I get, is that when you have older people around you that have been there and done that, they question you. And I don't getting a feeling of Arteta's personality. He doesn't want to be questioned. He thinks he knows what's going on. He thinks he knows it already. Nostradamus says Molina is the other young guy. I think it was his birthday today or yesterday. So yeah, Social Join says, got to stop blaming the players. If it's Arteta buying players and then not using them, who is doing the poor scouting and signing off on the players? I'm over Arteta. I know you told me that earlier. You told me that earlier too. You were over Arteta. Social Joins. I totally understand you. I know. I get why people are. I think the Fulham game really just broke something in the fan base, and a lot of people that I feel like were holding a lot of, like, anger back off of the back of, like, all of the things that, like, basically off of not winning the title, and then the choices that were made over the summer with Ramsdale and Raya and Kai Havertz and things like that, not getting a striker and changing the style of play. All of those things have kind of come to a head. So I can understand why people are like that. And when you don't win, you don't buy yourself time with the fans. And that's the problem with always kind of like throwing the cups and stuff like that. And why I was really disappointed in going out of the Carabao Cup early was because it was probably the most winnable cup for us this season. Big teams that already went out early, and we just kind of flopped out of that. And I'm like, winning trophies, even if they're small domestic cups, will buy you more time. But Arteta hasn't won anything or been even near winning anything beyond the league once since the time he won the FA Cup, and every other time it's kind of been like a pathetic going out. And so he hasn't really bought himself time. So I can understand why fans are really disappointed, because you want to win things. Gilson says AirPod Albert is a real coach. I like AirPod Albert. I don't really know what he's doing, but I like him. He gives good vibes. Jamal says maybe he does know. Maybe this is a minor blip. Maybe it is a minor blip. My personal opinion on is this a blip is I think, of course, we'll play better at some point. I don't think we'll just continue to lose, but I'm seeing consistent patterns from Arsenal since Arteta has been manager that I don't like. And so I think us underperforming in most of the seasons that he's been here are because of those same patterns. The only season that felt really good was last season. It felt like we had finally flipped the switch and we went back to 2020, 2021, 2022 Arsenal this season, an Arsenal that I don't like. The horseshoe, the non-risk, the non-fun, the weird, tactics, like the inflexibility of the tactics. Those are things that I felt like we had went away from, So I think our form is is a blip, but I think some of the things that we consistently see are patterns that cannot be ignored. After 4 years of Mikel Arteta, you kind of know who he is, right? You know what I mean? Like, who he is. He's not flexible with his tactics. That, you know what I mean? He doesn't know how to use his squad. How he doesn't, these things already. Nick says, "Are you getting Ivan Toney?" No, we're getting Cristiano Ronaldo. Didn't you hear? No, I'm just joking. No, I don't think we're getting Ivan Toney. I said this on the earlier show that it's very unlikely that we get Ivan Toney. It's unlikely that we get anything done. If we get anything done, it will be a loan. And the only way that we'd be able to get a bigger signing done or a permanent signing would be if Arsenal were willing to part ways with some of the players in the team, like Nketiah and Nelson. But Arsenal are unwilling to get rid of those players because they're very important to Mikel Arteta's plans. Gilson says, not a blip if Kivior is playing at left back. Xhaka at left back didn't work. So trying Kivior at left back is self-harm. I can't even do it again. The Kivior conversation, it frustrates me so much. I already had a rant this morning. I won't have another rant. Manine says, if we somehow hold on to Ramsdale, which seems like we will, and crush the market value he built, I will concede we are run like madmen. And that's another thing is holding on to these players and then not playing them only hurts their value. And so when we get to the summer and they start talking about how they're going to sell all these players, but we inevitably end up not selling them for anything, it's all going to look really silly that we didn't sell them now. We should have sold Nketiah in the summer. We should have sold Emile Smith-Rowe in the summer. And if they were going to do this whole nonsense with Raya, they probably should have sold Ramsdale to alleviate all the bullshit that happened off of the back of Ramsdale just being around. If you had sold Raya, you had sold Ramsdale, and Raya had been there, not having the option of bringing Ramsdale in would have made people have to accept that shit a lot earlier. But it didn't. They created a mess. And so Arsenal kind of like to sit around in their mess, and they don't strike. They're not concise and effective and very like, boom. They kind of let things fester. And so kicking the Nketiah can down the road, like, here's the thing. They were saying earlier that the reason why they didn't want to move Nketiah on is because they'd have to replace him with a top level striker. No, you don't. That is BS. It's absolute BS that the only way that you can get rid of Nketiah, somebody that only go. Murata! Go! What a fantastic game this is. That's a hat trick. That's a hat trick for Alvaro Morata. So much for a bum. That guy is pretty good. He looks pretty good to me. I think like him, DePaul, and Griezmann have been fantastic in this game. So as much as I think Rodrigo DePaul looks ridiculous with those freaking cornrows, he's been playing out of his skin in this game. This has been a fantastic game, really. I need to watch more La Liga. Actually, a lot of people have been telling me that La Liga is the best league beyond the Premier League, and I feel like I need to be watching more of this because this game has been so fun to watch. A lot of quality. But yeah, I just feel like kicking the Nketiah can down the road makes no sense to me because you don't have to, if you sell him, you don't have to replace him. You have 3 players in the team currently that can play central. And quite frankly, I think they're better. They'd be better center forwards than he is. He's our top goal scorer because our forwards are shit right now. They're not playing well right now. They're not shit. They're not playing well right now. But 3 of those goals were against Sheffield. Who cares? Anybody can score against Sheffield. You could have put me out there to put that ball in the back of the net. Be freaking for real. You don't have to replace him. You have Trossard that can play there. You have Havertz that can play there. You have Martinelli that can play there. Moving Nketiah on would be so perfect because in January, people are really desperate for goals to save their behinds. Crystal Palace, West Ham, these teams are desperate to bring in players that can score goals. It's normal. But Arsenal think that Nketiah is important to the squad. It wouldn't be that difficult to replace his goals. It wouldn't. If Trossard or Havertz or Martinelli got as much time and consistency that Nketiah gets at center forward, they would score just as many goals. So this idea that you have to replace him with a top quality striker is nonsense. It's just a reason why Arsenal, it's just an excuse. It's just an excuse. Somebody needs to put the booze down and get all the way for real because you do not need to keep him. It's just an excuse, you know? So, but Nketiah, they'll be talking about wanting to sell him for 50 million in the summer and nobody will touch him because there'll be better options in the summer than Eddie Nketiah. But he's a good option in January because people are desperate. I don't know what to tell you. So move him on and stop playing around, you know? Chris Fraser says, effing Murata with the hat trick. Love it. Super Kai says, can't wait to wake up tomorrow to see Murata links. I would probably welcome those because he's better than the strikers that we have. I said what I said. O'Malley says Alexia Garcia is a good player, or Alex Garcia is a good player. Boy says Saka, ESR, Willick, Martinez, Awobi, AMM, Reese. These players are either getting minutes with us or would be getting minutes elsewhere in the Prem. That guy you were actually paying attention to that year. Okay, I get what you're saying. You're talking about other things. Social Join says people that don't maximize their resources piss me off. I view people as wasting food. Here to there says no one has ever told me a single above average trait that Nketiah possesses, but he's important to the team. I think any other manager would be looking to move him on. Like, I just don't understand. Like, it's very obvious that he's a very average striker by the teams that be interested in bringing him in and just what we've been watching over the last 3 years. Like, he's not that good and it's not that deep and it's not, it's okay. He's not good enough for Arsenal. But for him to be such an important part of the team, it goes back to what I said earlier, kind of makes me feel like Arteta is trying to prove a point rather than just be all the way freaking for real. And stop trying to make Nketiah happen. He's not going to happen. He's never going to become a really good striker. If he does, it'll be way later on in his career, but I have a very hard time believing he's going to do a Harry Kane on us. It's not happening. So he doesn't have the physical qualities. He doesn't have the clinical finishing. He doesn't have anything special skill set to make me think that he doesn't have a good ball striking. Like, there's nothing about Nketiah that really stands out. So the idea that we just need to keep, like, the only way we can move him on is if we bring in somebody that's much better than him and is like a world-class striker, miss me with that. You don't want to make the big decisions. You're willing to risk our season by making big decisions and bringing in Havertz or, whatever, but you're not willing to make a big decision on Nketiah. We ain't ruthless, like I said. We're not ruthless enough. Here to there says, honestly, Nketiah wouldn't get into the Fulham side. Could Eddie do what Raul Jimenez did to us? No. Nostradamus says Cedric makes nearly double the money Smith Rowe does. Let that sink in. Cedric was a terrible signing. We signed him. He was injured. He is on like 75,000 pounds per week. Very bad player. But Arteta bought him because Ainsley Maitland-Niles would not play right back. And he could not get Ainsley Maitland-Niles to play right back. He just couldn't do it. And then instead of just maybe giving it more time and trying to really convince Ainsley Maitland-Niles, he decided to bring in somebody. And it was a bad signing because we can't even get rid of the guy. We'll get a nominal fee, but at least we'll be able to get his wages off the books, which is great. O'Malley says, out of all the Haaland guys, I don't know why Eddie gets the most chances. Yeah. it was weird because remember when having those conversations a couple of, months ago in the summer window where everybody was saying that like there were some people that were saying Nketiah was better than Balogun and blah blah blah. And my reasoning for wanting Balogun to leave was because he didn't want to be here. If he had wanted to be at Arsenal, I would have said keep him because he's obviously really talented. But you don't want players around that don't really want to be here. But Arteta seemed really desperate to sell him and not really interested in trying to convince him to stay. But he's very wedded to Nketiah, very wedded to Nketiah. And I thought one of the things that we could have done was just sell Nketiah and move Balogun up the pecking order. Because Balogun is more talented than Nketiah. Nketiah could be better than Balogun right now, just based off the fact that he has more experience. Eddie is 24. I think people forget that Eddie is not a child. He's 24, so he's older than Balogun, so he has more experience. But I think everybody already knew that Balogun was he has a higher ceiling than Nketiah. He's going to be a better player, whatever. And so a lot of people were trying to justify the idea that Nketiah was just so much better than Balogun that it made a lot of sense. The only reason why it made sense was because Balogun didn't want to be here. But if he had showed any sort of signs of wanting to be at Arsenal, we should have made him the backup striker and Nketiah should have gone because it's just so obvious. And the one thing about Balogun that I don't think Arteta would have appreciated, again, going back to our earlier conversation, is Balogun has the ego. Balogun is arrogant, but most good strikers are arrogant. Good strikers, if they aren't arrogant, they're probably not very good. Um, let's see. Super Kai says 100% want people who want to be here. The only reason I wanted to see Balogun is because we've seen 3 or more years of Eddie and I'm bored of it. Exactly. Like we know what Eddie can do, you know? Chris Frazier says Eddie is less than 2 years younger than Jesus. Let that sink in. People still talk about him like he's in the youth. I don't know why people pretend like he's still a kid. He's not. He's 24. He's younger. He's older than Vlahovic. Let that sink in. Kenneth says every club has its problems. We saw City, Liverpool. I won't mention others having a rough time. We can bounce back in the second half. Yeah, we could bounce back in the second half. Like, I don't think that this is our final form. Like, I don't think Fulham is who we are. I just feel like overall we haven't seen so far our best yet. Even our best game against Brighton, we still weren't super convincing in front of goal. And so we just have to figure things out. I think the team needs a break. I think Arteta needs to rethink his tactics. He has to figure out a way to release the handbrake just a little bit to get these players up front going a little bit more. But I think just the last 2 games on top of the Villa game, on top of not, the Liverpool game, on top, there's just a lot of different things that have built up that have made people lose faith. But I don't think people had a lot of faith from minute 1 based on what they saw in preseason and the summer transfers that we made. So you have to give some Arsenal fans some leeway here, is that if you never really believed that we were better than what we were last season, the last 2 games will really kind of break you. And a lot of Arsenal fans are really frustrated. So, I don't think people are necessarily saying that we're going to lose every single game from here on out and this is all we're going to be. But even if we had, even if those games hadn't happened, there were already questions around whether or not Arsenal were maximizing the group. And I don't think that we have. So that's all it really is. Ham says all Eddie lacks is finishing, which is unfortunate. He won't ever develop. We should cash in on him, but let's not act like he's some joke player. I don't know. Like, first of all, if all Eddie lacks is finishing, then you know, the thing is like if you lack finishing, but you have everything else, that means you're Gabriel Jesus. Gabriel Jesus has everything else but finishing. And Eddie doesn't have any of the things that Gabriel Jesus has. He can't link play. He's not a good passer. He has a terrible touch. He's not fast. He's not strong. He's not tall. He's not physical. He's not any of those things. So he actually lacks more than just finishing. In fact, his finishing should be a lot better because he doesn't have any of the other skills. So if he had all those other skills, he would be Gabriel Jesus, and he's not. You know, Gabriel Jesus is beyond him. So um, Nketiah is not a joke player in terms of, I don't think that he's like a League One player. Like, I don't agree with that. I think he's mid to lower level Premier League player. But again, this is a player that Arsenal are actively saying is a really important part of their squad. And that is that's troubling, I think, for Arsenal fans to hear, because in any other team, if they had an Eddie Nketiah, they would be the last guy on the list. And he's the first one up. So he's not a there is a reason why Arsenal fans are not excited about Eddie. I don't think you can ignore it. You know what I mean? I think at a certain point you just have to accept that he's not it, not for Arsenal Football Club. So um I don't think he's a joke, you know. I just don't think he's good enough for Arsenal. And the fact that he's held in such high regard at Arsenal is very worrying. I said at one point that um, Eddie Nketiah would sack Mikel Arteta, and I keep feeling that way because he's too beholden to him. It's very strange. Um, SKD says Balogun was sold because they knew they wouldn't be able to generate enough money for Eddie. Even if that's the case, like Arsenal, um, Arsenal were so bad at selling, and if you weren't going to make enough money, like you could have still sold some other players. Like, there's still opportunities to sell other players and you didn't do it. So even if they felt like, okay, well, we're going to sell Balogun because Balogun would get more money and Nketiah wouldn't, what would the difference have been? We sold Balogun for 30. We could have sold Eddie to a Premier League team for 25. So, or 20. So what's 5 to 10 million difference? You could have also sold some of the other players that you're not using right now, like Emile Smith Rowe or whatever. So I'm not really buying that. I think Arteta just wanted Balogun out because Balogun felt like he wasn't going to sit on Arteta's bench. He just wasn't going to sit on Mikel Arteta's bench. He wanted to go play, and Arteta just was like, well, then I really want you out. They were really desperate to get rid of Balogun, and I've never seen them so desperate to sell a player before, a talented player at that. So, yeah, I don't really know if it's just about the money thing. I think it was just more Balogun was like, I don't want to sit on your bench. I want to play. And who would want to sit on the bench? Look at Trossard. Look at the players that we have right now that are sitting behind Eddie. It's demoralizing. Yo-Yo says the squad's perceived insufficiencies are on Arteta and Edu. Not interested in debating how poor the fringe players are when I'm unconvinced by Arteta and Edu's talent and competency. Gilson says, yeah, move Zinni at midfield and bring in 2 left backs. I don't even want to buy another left back. I'm so tired of us buying left-sided center back, left back. We bought it so many times. Tommy's meant to play on both sides. Timber was meant to play on both sides. And Zinchenko's already there. Kivior is meant to play there. How many times are we going to buy this position? Tavares was bought in that position. Tierney was re-signed for that position. How many times are we going to buy that position? Stop buying left-sided center backs. Make it work with the players that you have. And because we need other things in other areas. The fact that we're so heavily focused on defense and rebuying players in those positions just absolutely infuriates me. Stop buying these guys and do something else. Blue Lion says criticizing Arteta is really offensive. She hasn't put a foot wrong. Respect my manager, or Arteta hasn't put a foot wrong. If you think he hasn't done anything wrong, that's fair enough. I don't think Arteta's gotten everything wrong, but I also don't think he's gotten everything right. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. And I'm wondering if you really believe that somebody that's only managed for 4 years in their entire life could possibly be getting everything right and never put a foot wrong. You know what I mean? But if you think Arteta's never made a mistake, fair enough. I don't think he's been as bad as people are saying that he's been, but I also don't think he's been as good as people are making out to seem. And with 4 years under no pressure and infinite amount of resources, Arteta's lived a very charmed life at a top club, based on his results. So, yeah, I just want to put that out there. Chosen One says, Jess, about Saka, I was watching a comp of his passing because of all the nonsense about his scruffy GA. And wow, his creation is special. Him being stuck hugging the touchline limits him. We spoke about this on the earlier show, that Saka is better, more central. He is a creator, and the fact that he's being asked to do so much goal scoring is kind of wild to me because yeah, he is a goal scorer, but he's somebody that I feel like could really rack up so many. Like we saw his creation skills when he was playing at left back. He's really good. His delivery is very good. He can see the pass, like he has all that kind of stuff. And so he is being wasted on the wing, so far away from everybody else, having to beat 4 or 5 players without any overlap or anything like that. It's, you know, being a winger at Arsenal is a very difficult job, because you're not really helped by anybody and you're made to do all the scoring and all the assisting. And your center forward doesn't have to do any of that shit. And neither does, like, nobody else has to do any of it but you and the other guy on the other side. It's not a fun position to play, I think, for Arsenal. So yeah, I think Saka is a really good creator, and I would love to see him in more central positions. I think he could be a solution at left center mid, but what can we do? We have a hole on the right hand side. Arsenal have been begging out for a winger for years now, and we haven't really solved that issue. So many things get kicked down the road because we have to continuously buy center backs and left backs and things like that. We continuously buy in the same position over and over again. We bought Jorginho, we bought Thomas Partey, then we bought Jorginho, then we bought Declan Rice, but we still need to buy an attacking midfielder on the left-hand side. We still haven't done it. We bought Havertz, and he's not really that guy. He can play that position, but it's just curious. Like, it's very curious. But I would love for us to stop buying defenders and stop rebuying in the same position and address key areas that have been neglected, like striker, like winger, like left center mid, because we've been asking for those for years. Even when Xhaka was here, we were complaining for so long that we just needed to bring somebody in. Arsenal acted as though while Xhaka was here, you could not buy anybody else. Arsenal fans also accept the idea that, nobody will want to come to Arsenal because, who would want to sit behind so and so. So we don't want a competitive scenario. Look at every other team that we compete with. They have multiple wing options beyond the guys that always start, but only Arsenal are allowed to have 2. What world are we living in where we can't have 4 or 5 really top quality midfield options, 2, 3, 4 top quality wing options, more than one good striker? What world are we living in? Why do we accept this nonsense? I don't get it. But if we stop buying in the same positions over and over again, then maybe we would have better balance across the squad. How many left backs are we going to buy? Like, it's so many. But that's all I'm saying. Like, if I hear one more person say it's really going to be hard to convince any top quality winger to sit behind Saka, I'm going to throw up. I'm going to throw up. So we're just meant to not have any other quality backup because they're afraid to sit behind Saka. That's a fucking excuse. Like, it's an excuse not to buy a player. I think I saw that written earlier about Michael Olise, that maybe Arsenal were interested in him or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's going to be really difficult to convince Olise to come to Arsenal because of blah, blah, blah. I mean, if he went to Chelsea, he'd be sitting behind players. He'd have to fight for his position between Madueke and Cole Palmer, but I'm sure he would jump his ass over there. So why can't Arsenal have more than one good? Be serious. Like, be serious. I don't want to hear that nonsense anymore. Arsenal be It's like, of course a player would want to come to Arsenal. We're going to pay good wages and we're a competitive side. Of course they'll come and fight for their position, but also Arteta doesn't create a competitive environment because he kills the players that are not starters. So, Yo-Yo says, with greater quality comes great expectations on the manager and director being developed. Second in Soj says, at which other big club would it be acceptable for the manager to spend 700 odd over 4 years and only win 1 FA Cup before the rebuild? By the way, which other big club would employ a complete rookie? No one else would. The guy says, Girona's manager, perfect fit for Arsenal. I like the football that they play. It's fun. It's exciting, This was us last season, by the way. Every time somebody's like, watch Girona, watch Bayer Leverkusen, they're playing great football. I'm like, that was us. A lot of the shit I'm watching them do are things that we were doing last season, but better. It's so sad. It's so sad. Gilson says right wing, striker, center mid. three positions that have been consistently overlooked because we can't get away from buying DMs and left backs. Like, you know what I mean? We need to stop. It's like, stop the nonsense. Here to there says Arteta has shown such a resistance to build a healthy rotation compared to Liverpool. Pep, they regularly use 17, 18 players. Mindful Mastery says, hey, Jess, today is my birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Hey, it's been around 14 years since I started supporting the club, and I guess it's fair to say I'm still disappointed. Oh, man. Well, don't let Arsenal get you down. It's your birthday. My birthday is actually in a couple of days as well, so you're my Capricorn friend. So, yeah, enjoy your birthday. Don't let Arsenal take you out of your, out of your birthday mood. And listen, it's hard being an Arsenal fan. We're the toughest soldiers out here. So, yeah, but better times will come. I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what to tell you about Arsenal, but I can tell you happy birthday, and I hope it's really good for you, and I hope you're happy and healthy and all that kind of stuff. Temmie says, I give Arteta one more season and he's off. If no success, are you going to go, Temmie? Are you going to go over there and fire him yourself? He's off. I love that. Make sure you're going to walk straight into Edu's office and tell him that Arteta needs to go. Fair enough. Social Join says, the question is when Josh says no money, the guy is in trouble. Yeah, I think he needs to say no soon. Like, I think he needs to tell Arteta, or somebody needs to tell Arteta, look, you spent so much money already and we're not getting enough out of it. A lot of players that, like, I guarantee in the next 2 seasons, Kivior and Fabio Vieira will still be on our books, but they'll be nowhere to be found. That, I don't know, how much was it? Almost 60 million will just be straight down the drain. Somebody has to reel this man in. He's just spending money, but wasting it. Boy says, if Gvardiol Prem prove him, I don't know what y'all talking about. Oh, you guys are talking to each other. I get what you're saying. Social Join says, listen, once the fans turn on Arteta, it's going to be worse than Wenger. I'll tell you that for free. It will be, because for Wenger to have gone down the way that he went down, Arteta's not getting that same grace. It's not going to take as long. And ooh, they almost scored. It's not going to take that long. And when it happens, people are not going to be like, but it's Arteta. Like, Wenger won things, at least more than a couple of things. He had a lot of credit in the bank, probably more than he should have. I'm honest. I wanted Wenger to go in 2015 because I wanted us to get Klopp. Not because I didn't love him, but I also want managers to go out, managers like Arsene to go out with their pride intact. Like, I think the way that he went out was very damaging, and some fans have never really recovered from it. So I thought he should have went in like 2015, and then we could have gotten Klopp, but we waited too long. And sometimes when you wait too long, you miss your window. I don't think you always have to sack a manager when it's like super obvious. Just like you shouldn't always sell a player when it's super obvious. You should be proactive, not reactive. Not saying that we should sack Arteta right this second, but I definitely don't think it's something that should be so off the table. Like, it's nonsense. Chosen One says, but yeah, Saka can play anywhere up front and even in the midfield. Gabby can play multiple positions up front, so can Jesus. There would be plenty of playing time for other attackers coming in. I agree. I don't really agree with this whole nonsense about Arsenal can only have 2 top quality players that play up front and anybody else behind them. But I think that also stems from the way that Arteta has managed the squad. To people understand that Saka always is going to play even if he has half a leg. Martinelli's always going to play even if he's painfully out of form. So they may just be assuming that Arteta just never wants to rotate, and maybe that's the case, but that doesn't mean that Arsenal should not actively pursue a top quality winger, that we should have more than one. Everybody else has more than 1 or 2. We should have 2 or 3 top quality winger options. Like, we're the only team that doesn't have that. Aston Villa have better midfield depth and quality than we do. As sad as that sounds, they do, and nobody's complaining. Nobody's kicking they're not kicking the ground all upset and shit. They all look fine to me, so why can Arsenal only have 1 or 2 good options? What the fuck is that about? Come on. Boy says, I knew Saliba was good enough to play when he went on loan. Is he prem proven when he finishes the loans? Nostradamus says Cozier, Dewberry, and Sego Jr. would be on 3 prem goals each now if Wenger was still in charge. If Wenger was in charge, we definitely have the team would look so different. The team would look so different. I think players would be playing in different positions. I definitely don't think we'd have anywhere near the same amount of defenders that we have. We'd have way less defenders, more attackers, more academy players involved. We know how Arsene does, and even he didn't get the balance right. Even Arsene didn't get the balance right. So I don't want to revise history on Arsene as well. He had his flaws, and Arteta kind of. I love that he takes so much pride in the defensive part of the game, but he's not getting the balance right now. We're not getting enough juice out of the attack, and it's hurting us. The balance is like we've swung in the complete other direction. And it almost feels like, with the academy players, it's like, I'm going to give you this opportunity on the bench, but I'm going to make you work really hard to even get a sniff on the pitch. And the only time I'll give you a minute is if the club are negotiating your contract. That's just not a good look for me. I think you should, give them time in games where they're inconsequential or low level games, to give them a taste of it. Like, it's not going to end our world if they play a couple of seconds. Like, it's really not. I don't know why Arteta was acting like those minutes were so damn sacred. Score. Yeah, I don't know why I was acting like those minutes against PSV were so damn sacred. They weren't. They weren't. It didn't mean anything. We still drew. We were still shit in the game. And it would have been nice to at least see some academy players, because at least they play hard. That's one thing about academy kids, and a trick that we missed, is when we used to play in the cups, we'd always play academy kids, because even if you wanted to rotate, you would still get the energy required to win the game. When you play our players that are basically demoralized from Mikel Arteta and are asked to play in these games where everybody is rotated, and it's obviously not an important game because everybody is rotated, you get nothing out of them, So maybe just bring in 5 or 6 kids and just say, this is the cup team. We're just going to do this. And it always worked in the past. We're missing a trick. I remember watching Arsenal play. I forget, it was like one game. I forget who we played against. It was like Nottingham Forest or somebody else. Like, it was somebody like that under Unai. And we beat up some team like 6-0 with like Willock and Reece Nelson and shit. I miss those days. Those were so fun because it was just games where you just got to relax. None of our games are relaxing anymore. They're all fucking brutal. Like, every single game is like, oh my gosh, no matter what it is. Every game is so effing stressful. I would love to go back to those days. A simpler time. Second Soj, thank you so much for your super chat. Says, only watch yours and Curtis streams now because you're real and balanced. Hope this is enough for a coffee where you are. Of course it is. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You guys know, you guys are adding to my coffee fund. And I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, I am a coffee fiend. Like, I don't know if you guys are not, or if you guys are or not. I don't know what you guys' drink of choice. You guys can let me know in the comments. But the only way that I get through these days, like these long days where I wake up early and stay up late to like create content and do stuff, is with coffee. I like, do not speak to me before the coffee is made, because I do not want to be responsible for what I say in those moments. I don't. When I was a flight attendant, oh my goodness, we used to have call times that were like 3 a.m., 2 a.m. to do like 4:30 flights. The chattiness from the pilots and the other flight attendants used to be like, oh my goodness, will you be quiet? The coffee has not settled in yet. I would like literally get off the van when we get to the airport, walk straight into the airport as quickly as I can, get to the coffee shop and get it. Because if I don't get it, I am so bad. I am so bad without coffee. So thank you guys so much. Like, you guys have no idea. You guys are like saving my life. I really appreciate this second Soj. Really appreciate it. Let's see what else you guys are saying. And I love the chat right now. There's 230 of you guys in here, which is amazing. And I love that you guys are talking to each other, and it feels like it's a good environment. Like, you guys are chit-chatting with each other and there's no like bad vibes. I love that. So keep going, guys. Jamal said, I'm a coffee fiend for sure. No shame. No shame. No shame. Jack says, are you watching the Girona match? Yes, I am. What a good game this has been. It's in the 84th minute now, and it's tied 3-3. Girona are on the attack. Let's see what they do. I remember I wanted that Jan Kuoto. I wanted him at Arsenal. And he went to City. He's Brazilian. He went to City, and he never really played for them. And now obviously he's playing for them because it's Citigroup and all that kind of stuff. He looks like a decent player. I don't know if I'd want him at Arsenal still, but I wanted him back. Oh my goodness, Depay is coming in. I thought it was like he had disappeared off the face of the earth, wasn't it? It's like sometimes I forget he still plays football. It's crazy. But yeah, I am watching this game, and like now I feel like I want to watch more La Liga because sometimes it gets boring just watching the Premier League sometimes. There's always so much drama in the Premier League, especially like with refs and stuff like that. Sometimes I feel like it's nice to take a break and watch something else that like there has been no issues with like VAR or anything in these games. It's just the game, you know? It's a nice break, I think. It has nothing to do with Arsenal, so I don't have to be worried. Chosen One says, it seems like Arteta is so afraid of being vulnerable defensively. We were actually better last season defensively with attack being more free flowing. Rice, Willie, and Gabby fire extinguishers. And I think that's the thing that we've learned in the first half of the season is that, you know, if you spend 100 million on Declan Rice, you could probably be a little bit more expansive. Last season, we were probably being a little bit too expansive and a little bit too desperate to attack. But sometimes your best defense is attack. And, and you have to be willing to take risks to score goals. And we just don't take enough risks. I don't think it's the players cannot do it. I think they're being maybe instructed not to. And I wonder why that is and why he's gone so far in the other direction. I think that one of our bigger issues, like I feel like if Arteta really looked at last season and said, what were the parts of the season where we fell apart? It was probably, you know, injuries in certain positions, not having that extra insurance policy on transition, and not having enough goals, maybe when it really mattered, having like a true goal scorer that can come in and make sure that like which shit hits the fan that we have like an insurance policy up front. And we just didn't do that. We just needed to buy one defender. We needed to buy one midfielder and maybe, you know, another midfielder to add like because another midfielder can also be a way to score more goals too, right? If you buy a midfielder that has that eye for goal and has the eye of the needle and is very creative, that's another way to create more goals. But we did neither one of buying an attacker that can finish off chances or buying a creative midfielder that can create chances. We bought somebody that doesn't really do either at a high level, if that makes sense. And so it's kind of like he missed the plot a little bit. It's when we got Declan Rice, I thought, oh, he gets it on transition. We need to be a little bit more secure and have somebody that's really going to stop those attacks from happening before they happen, which is something that Declan does really well. But we still double down. We don't overlap as much as we used to. We don't really flood the box as much as we used to. We used to almost put like 6 guys in the box at one time. We used to really commit numbers forward. We used to switch positions all the time. You would find Martinelli on the right-hand side. You find Saka on the left. Jesus would be behind the DMs. You know, left center mid would be in center forward. So many things that we're just not doing this season. The closest that we've gotten to it was Brighton at home. That was the closest we've gotten to it, where the positions were swapping and the attack was really going, but we still weren't clinical enough. And Martinelli still was dead in that game. So yeah, he needs to figure that out. But it's weird to me that his whole thing from last season was we need to stop attacking and start defending. You know, like I feel like that's weird. Temi says, "Hey Jess, we only need to look internally to solve our issues. No need to waste money buying a striker. We do have internal solutions. I don't think that. I think buying another player would definitely help us, especially if it's further forward. If it's a midfielder or an attacker, I definitely think that could help boost us a little bit and add some new blood. But Arteta just needs to change his tactics a little bit, in my opinion, to get a little bit more out of this group. They don't look like they're having fun. They don't look like they're playing free flowing. You know, Arsenal, you want to come to play for the vibes, you know? Remember last season, everybody was talking about the way Arsenal play is so much fun. I wonder what they think now. So I think if he just modifies, I forgot Aspilicueta went there. If Arteta just changes his tactics just a little bit, he would solve some of his problems, I think. And also if we can get a little bit of a break. Nuances says, what internal solutions? We sold the last one. Internal solutions like just change your tactics a little bit to allow our players to, first of all, play players in positions that suit them. That's a start. You know, play your star players like star players. If you know that Saka and Martinelli are better near goal, how about freaking get them there? You know, things like that. Those are internal solutions. You know, play your squad players and players in positions where they can play well so that they fine. So that they get the confidence, so then when you need them, you can use them. Simple things like that are internal solutions. I think we always want to buy players because we're obsessed with buying players, and I think we can use them. But even just switching our tactics, we could get a lot better than what we've been. That's how I feel. I don't think he's using our players correctly. Basically, Saka and Martinelli are creating for players that don't score enough goals, that aren't natural goal scorers. They're creating chances for Havertz and Jesus and Nketiah and Odegaard instead of people creating for them. That's what I mean by internal solutions. That's what I mean. Um, so yeah, that's my point on that. Let's see. Social Join says, it's not about the damn midfield. We need to move away from the false nine. The top goal scorers is in the leagues are classic strikers. Jesus, Eddie, ain't it false nine den. Y'all maybe missed the damn goal. Messing around with y'all. No, I'm just joking. Wow. That's sensational. They got the juice. Girona stole our juice. I don't know how they did it, but that was such an Arsenal thing to do right then. To score in like the last, like there was only 3 minutes left in the game, 4-3. Man, I miss the vibes. I miss the vibes. But I know we all feel like we need a traditional number 9, but I seriously don't think that, like, we may have needed to move away from Jesus this season, blah, blah, blah. But does anybody truly believe that this team, the team that we have right now, is playing to its full potential? And that even with players that maybe have flaws that are obvious, that we couldn't still get more? Like, with the players that we have, we can't play a little bit better. I think we can. So yeah. Let me watch the goal since I missed it. Ooh. Girona are just in it. Who is this? Number 23. The way he dug that out was crazy. Wow. I love football, y'all. It's the best. Aman says, I don't know why he made this summer so complicated. All he needed to do was upgrade on the Xhaka position on a proper left center mid instead of changing the system. Listen, I think everybody's asking those questions. Why didn't we just? I agreed with the Timber signing. Of course, I agree with the Timber signing. I thought he was definitely the player that we needed to bring in to kind of like complete the defense, because we had moved away from Zinchenko very quickly, and also Ben White is somebody that I don't think is going to be a forever starter for us. That was my unpopular opinion a year ago. Is that as much as I love Ben White, I do think that he has limitations to his game, and so Timber would have been better on that side, and Timber probably would have been better on the left. Rice was definitely somebody that we needed because beyond, I know people don't like this opinion, but Thomas Partey is just not reliable enough. And off the ball, Thomas Partey definitely got quite a bit. So it was nice to bring in somebody like Declan Rice, who, if you're the only way to upgrade upon Thomas Partey was to buy somebody like Declan Rice. Thomas Partey is already such an elite level player when he's on it, that it was always going to be difficult to get just 5% more out of that position. So we spent a lot of money. I was fine with that. That last 65 million, that shit could have been spent so differently. It could have been spent so differently. It could have been bought for a left center mid, and it could have been bought for an attacker, and we did neither. And, for Arsenal to have went for Gundogan and also Mason Mount, and to end up with Havertz, feels like we just completely abandoned the original plan, which was to buy a creative left center mid. As this is an unpopular opinion, I don't give a damn. I wanted Mount. I don't care. I know he's been a flop at Manchester United, but I think there's a player in there. The exact type of player you want in and around the box and creating chances left and right in the left center mid position. You were never getting Gundogan, so I don't know what world you were living in. You were never getting Gundogan. And there was other players that you could have looked at as well that probably Arsenal fans would have loved a lot more. But Havertz wasn't anything like either of those two at all. At all, And so it feels like we just said, we're going to do something completely different. And instead of getting an attacker or left center mid, because we couldn't get our original targets, we're going to go for something that is so different. And oh, by the way, spend like a lot of money on it. Insane. 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 Social Join says, I always thought Ben White, Zinni were going to get upgradable, and that's fine. The fact that you have players in your team that you were very close to winning the league with, but you can still upgrade upon them, that's fine, because I don't have a problem with Ben White and Zinchenko being in the team. I have a problem with not having other options beyond them, because you need them, because they have very specific skill sets, and neither one of them are really well-rounded. And Arsenal probably need to look at that too moving forward if they are to buy another right back or a left back. And I think Timber is more well-rounded than they are, but they should start buying players that can do both sides of the game. I'd rather them invest heavily one time on a player that can do everything than continuously kind of like buy somebody for 18 million or somebody for 25 million, and neither one of them can do the full job, but both of them are like, you know what I mean? Like having Zinchenko and Tomiyasu is like having one left back. Does that make sense? And that's why I would rather them, if they're, instead of keep spending the same money like on Kivior, Tomiyasu, and Zinchenko to have no left back, I'd rather them just spend big on one left back that can do everything. And then you're done with this. You're done. You're done. When's the last time Liverpool bought a fullback for real? They haven't. They bought Andy Robertson and they brought Trent Alexander-Arnold through their academy, and they brought Tsimikas, but that's it. Arsenal continuously buying this position because I don't think they just say, you know what, we're going to get it right this time and go with a well-rounded player. They go with something that's super niche. Like, don't go with something that's super niche, go with more well-rounded players. But that's what I would just do. I was okay with it at first because I understood that we had to go for Zinchenko because we couldn't get Lisandro Martinez. I get that. But moving forward, stop buying players that can only do one job. Buy players that can do everything. The Arsenal Perspective says, good afternoon, SKA people. Hope you're all really well. You're all well. I hope you guys are well too. These two streams today have been kind of fun. So I'm enjoying talking to you guys more. Yo-Yo says, I didn't want Mount, but I understood it. Odegaard is sweet, and Mount is salty, smooth, and rough. Made more sense to me than Kai, but we dodged a bullet based on his physical frailties. Oh, man. I love the way only you could say that, Yo-Yo. If I said that, people would be like, what are you talking about? But I saw the vision with Mason Mount. But again, I rate the player, and I like him a lot. So it's like, I would have taken him in a heartbeat. For 50 million, I would have taken him, because for me, I think he's a really good creative player that scores goals and does the things. But everybody else would have been pissed. So that's fine. I don't care. Vaya says, Arteta overcomplicated things, and then he also is stubborn, just stuck in his ways when it's obvious it's not working. That's not a good trait. You have to change when plan A is not working. Yeah, you have to have a plan B, or you have to at least be flexible and be willing to play players in positions that really suit them. Neil Gunner says, bring up Mount stats. Maybe I will. Let's see. They probably don't look good now, but they look good before. Guys, I will not back down. I like Mount. Sorry. I was mad that Manchester United got him and we ended up with Kai Havertz. I like Kai Havertz, but it is what it is. So this ain't right. This can't be right. No, I don't think that this is right. It can't be. Oh, 365 days. He ain't played no games. See, you guys try to set me up. Damn, he hasn't played at all. He's just injured. Damn. Maybe we dodged a bullet, but maybe it would have been different at Arsenal. I don't know. Mr. Happy said, I want Morgan Gibbs-White. I'll be honest with you. I really like Morgan Gibbs-White, and I would take him at Arsenal, but he strikes me as somebody that's going to be desperate to go to Manchester United because that's the team that he grew up supporting. The way he almost killed himself trying to play against them the other day was like a player that was twerking hard in the strip club. So I think he will go. I think he will end up there at some stage because that's where he really wants to be. Baya says, Madison is who we needed, but no, my manager likes underperforming players. Mindful Mastery says he's playing at United. What do you expect? Neil says, what's his stats? You didn't read them? I did read them, but I will not read them out loud now. D'Angelo says, I love Jessica's podcast, the best podcast. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Nuances says, yeah, you're right. He would have been our dud. He would have been our dud. Aman says he originally wanted Mount, but Mount rejected us due to Chelsea thing, I think. Exactly, he did. Here to there says at least signing Mount would have meant no Havertz. Even if Mount was injured, no Havertz would have been a massive positive for us. Damn. Chosen One says, I think Jesus moving out onto the wing and having Nelly go central might have been more lethal. Nelly is more of a natural goal scorer, and Saka and Jesus are excellent creators. They could feed Nelly. That was my suggestion for the Fulham game, but instead Arteta decided Nketiah equals more goals. You know, I didn't really get that. But maybe we'll come back from the break and Arteta will have thought of something different, you know? Billy, thank you so much for your super chat. Billy says, will AFC ever win the league without Wenger? Yeah, of course they will. I don't think that I think that this team, with the right manager, whether that's Arteta or not, and a couple more signings, can definitely win the league. I don't think we're that far away. I think we're in a bad moment right now, so we're licking our wounds a little bit and feeling sorry for ourselves. But we are like one win away from feeling very different about our season. You know, we've had a difficult time in certain games because we couldn't score goals, whatever. But mostly, I think this team just needs a manager with more flexibility and the ability to make the in-game changes, and also motivate a team to feel like they're good enough to win the league. I feel like there's also a little bit of imposter syndrome with this team sometimes. I think they see themselves at the top of the table and they're like they start shitting themselves a little bit like we don't deserve to be here. And again, I would love to see the team speak with a little bit more chest. Like I would love to hear them say we really want to win the league and we think we can win it instead of we're going to work hard and improve. I want to see them make statements that make me believe that, like, even if they don't do it, that they believe that they can do it and then match that with confident performances. I think as a whole, this team is not confident enough. And a lot of the mentality and the confidence does come from the manager. The manager has to figure out a way to get into here and get that team going. And he hasn't figured out a way to do that. Our players are they're playing within themselves, you know. And you can't win the league if you're playing within yourself. You have to be free. You know, you have to be excited. You have to feel like you can win something. If you've ever been a part of a team or you played a sport at a high level, you cannot win if you're stiff and you're not having fun and you're not relaxed. You have to be relaxed. And this team is not relaxed. They have a stick up their butt. Neil says the team reflect the manager. The manager doesn't portray a confident figure. Very interesting that you say that. Does anybody else feel like Arteta doesn't portray himself as a confident figure? I would love to know because I've never thought whether or not he was confident. But maybe he doesn't come across confident, and I don't think he breathes confidence into his team. Like, you know what I mean? Like they don't seem motivated. Not motivated, like they're not lazy, but they seem like they're all up here and not enough in here. And when you do have to play with this a lot, playing with this will do a lot for how you're playing. And it seems like our players are all up here all the time. And when you're all up in your head, you can't relax and just play your game. And some of our players are they're much better when they're relaxed. Last season, we went to the toilet bowl, and I know Spurs weren't in the best mood, but watching, you know, Xhaka and Martinelli like showboat on Tottenham's, like in Tottenham Stadium, was nice to see because you want to have a little bit of that confidence, and you could tell that they were relaxed. This season, I haven't felt at any moment that this team has been relaxed. There's been an era, like a level of an uncertainty, and maybe that also is radiating at home, especially like with the fans not also having that energy. But you know, the players need to feel relaxed. They really need to feel relaxed. Neil says you have to want it. I see the players saying force calm. You should just know it. Ocampo says give him credit for going toe to toe with serial winners like Pep and Klopp for his fourth season as a manager. He just needs more investment. Pep spent $1 million to deliver the UCL to City. Yeah, I mean, I give him credit for getting us here, for sure. But I think you'd be lying to yourself if you didn't have some questions about Mikel Arteta's ability to get one over on Pep and Klopp. You know, if it's going to take him 10 years to get over Pep and Klopp, then we got problems. He can be in and amongst them right now. That's fine. That's cool. But can he win the silverware? Because that's ultimately what we want to do. We don't want to be just like dancing in the same place. We want to win the dancing contest, and we're not looking like a team that's going to do that right now. So I hear you. I hear what you're saying. Like, I don't think that he's doing a bad job. I think he can be doing a better job. And if he can't do a better job, then we need to find somebody that can. Here to there says, agreed. Arteta comes off smug, insecure, skittish. Night and day difference from Klopp and Liverpool, fierce, or Pep, cool, calm, precise. Yeah, I have to think about that. I have to think about that because I don't know if I feel 100% like he's just so arrogant and so insecure. I haven't really thought about it before, so I have to think about it a little bit more before I make like a big statement on it or anything. But I do think the mentality of the players comes from the manager. I believe that with my whole heart. I believe the team reflects the manager. So if the manager is confident, kind of arrogant a little bit, spicy, relaxed, those types of things, it comes across in the players' play. And you have to figure out a way to alleviate the pressure off of your players. You have to figure out a way to get them to be able to play their best way without feeling like the world is going to end if they make a mistake. And right now it feels like the world is going to end if they make a mistake. And last season it didn't feel like that because our players made mistakes, and right after that they fixed it. Think about when Gabriel gave away the ball to Mitrovic against Fulham. I think we scored like 2 seconds later. What happened to that team? You know? Kai USA says the team is falling apart. Let's get Cooper as interim coach and Spalletti in the summer. Kai, let's be serious. Like, it's not falling apart. It's just we've hit a bump in the road. It happens every season. Just relax. Like, I think that acting like we need to get Steve Cooper. I hope that's a joke, by the way. Getting Steve Cooper in as interim and then get Spalletti in the summer reeks of like sheer panic. We're not there yet. We're not so far off the pace where a good run of games could not, change the whole feeling. Remember, after Liverpool, we were on top of cloud nine. Now that we've lost 2 games, it's the end of the world. Football changes very quickly. And so I do think we have to be really careful with the idea of sack him and get Steve Cooper as an interim manager. Let's be serious, Aman says if he doesn't deliver silverware this season, uncomfortable conversations need to be had. They're already happening, but I hear you. Ocampo says the manager is not the only one to take the blame. The players stepped up at Anfield, so it's possible they can turn up when it matters. Yeah. Neil Gunner says, do you think Arteta wanted to wait for Zubimendi? Because Arteta clearly wants to upgrade on Partey since summer. Think he's been raving over Zubimendi. We do this thing with we want our perfect signing. So if the perfect signing is Zubimendi, we will wait for him. We know that. You guys know how I feel about Zubimendi. I don't have to tell y'all. I love Zubimendi. I think he's perfect for us. I think he fits the ethos very well. I think he won't go over with a lot of Arsenal fans because for a lot of Arsenal fans, Spanish equals weak. Spanish equals technical but lightweight and weak. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think there's strength in having a lot going on up here and being able to figure out how to have time on the ball, know where to be, not be rushed. And Zubimendi is a very intelligent player. He never looks rattled and he never looks like he's in a rush, but he can get away from his marker. He is somebody that can get the ball and be smart on it and kind of like jink, jink, jink around players and get away from pressure. So is he just like Thomas Partey? Absolutely not. Nobody's like Thomas Partey. I told you he's a unicorn. We'll never find him again. But Zubimendi brings a lot up here, and he would alleviate, Rice from having to do all the playmaking from midfield. It would also make sure that we don't have to have a left back that's doing all the tempo control and all that kind of stuff. Zubimendi is a fantastic player. I would love for us to get him, but by the time we get to the summer, where will we be? So that's something you have to think about. But listen, we're making choices. We're making choices. I don't know what the Havertz thing is about because if you're gonna get let's say your whole plan the whole time was to bring in Zubimendi. I can accept that. Your whole plan was, I like Zubimendi, I want him, and I wanted Declan Rice, Odegaard, and Zubimendi to be my midfield. But then why did you buy Havertz? Because you also want a striker, do you not? So you're going to have this striker that's going to cost us a lot. You're going to have this midfield that you've constructed, and then you're going to have Havertz that's 65 million and almost on 300,000 pounds per week sitting on your bench. Still doesn't make any sense. If you're going to get him, you should have got him for way less. I think it should have been something that they negotiated down, but they were they were very desperate to give Chelsea that money. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's crazy. The guy says Arteta can only coach wingers. Rest of the team are deficient. He can also coach a good defense. I won't take that away from him. I think our defensive structure and the way that we are off the ball is still the best, one of the best in Europe, despite us going through a difficult time. And really, I think a lot of the goals that we've conceded lately have been off of individual errors. So I'll give him that for sure. I think he can coach wingers and he can also coach a defense. But the midfield is where I really struggle because I'm like, listen, you're a midfielder. Why can't you construct just like a competent midfield? And why can't you get all the pieces kind of going at once? Why do we get one big piece there and then we wait a long time and then another big piece and then wait a long time? Just get it all done. Yo-Yo says, speaking about a manager, not the manager, having never met the guy. Boy says, only thing is Arteta didn't anticipate how much work Havertz would need to be made into a midfielder. How could he not anticipate that? He hadn't played midfield in 3 years. I don't know how he could have not anticipated it. If he thought that Havertz was just going to pop straight into our team, I could have told him that wasn't going to happen. You could look at him and see that it wasn't necessarily just a tactical or technical thing. It was going to be a mental thing as well, which for me was the biggest problem. I could understand a player that, needs to be, coached a little bit in the tactics, but having to get him up from like the depths of like depression to get him out of whatever was going on with Chelsea, for me, that was the biggest mistake because we don't need players with no confidence. We're lacking leadership and confidence and strong minds and strong voices. So to bring in somebody that's super shy and almost scared of his own shadow, for me was like, what are we doing? Yo-Yo says, I've always felt managers want to see players who embody them on the pitch. Rice, Zubi, Odie would embody Arteta. Yeah, that's pretty much as Arteta as it can get, but Arteta was a terrible tackler. I don't know if you guys remember this, but Arteta was awful off the ball. He was, especially at Everton, he was bad. But I can see what you're saying. I can see what you're saying with that. That's not a midfield that I think Arsenal fans will get behind, but it's definitely one that I can get behind. I like that midfield a lot. Aha says, the only time our attack bailed out our defense was the Luton game when the defense keeper had an off day. But they couldn't do so in the West Ham and Fulham games. Attack needs to fix up. I agree. The defense has been keeping us alive, and basically keeping no shots, no this, no that. And then obviously we had to start using Zinchenko more. The goals started coming a lot more. And then we started doing this thing where when we lose confidence, we stop defending well on corners. That like the whole first half of last season, we didn't give away any goals off of corners. Then as soon as we came back from the World Cup, all of a sudden, when our confidence was rocked a little bit, we had lost Gabriel Jesus and it started to become real that we were in a title race and we were in front, we stopped being able to defend corners. I don't know why that happens. Every time that we lose confidence, the first thing that goes is our competency defending corners. I don't know why that happens because we're usually really good at it. And then we go through like a period of time where we just, every single time that it gets crossed into the box, we concede off of a corner. I don't know. I don't think that's a Nicholas Yover thing. I think that's a personal thing. I think we let those things go when we're not confident. So yeah. Dio says Arteta seems to not be able to coach players. I don't know if that's just me. Nuances of Fate says people underestimate Arteta's hubris. Havertz just about sums him up. Chosen One says, Jess, I truly believe Martinelli could score 30 goals for us if we fed him enough. Certainly not with the current tactics, though. Our forwards might struggle to get 15 each with the system, to be honest. Martinelli is a much better player than our Martinelli is a lot better than what he's showing right now. That's for sure. If he could get 30 goals or not, I'm not sure, but he's definitely not a 2-goal per season attacker. Like we know that he's not that. So yeah, But you guys, we have just talked about anything and everything. So we're going to go ahead and get out of here. I know there's 200 of you guys in here. So make sure you guys like the video and subscribe to the channel on your way out. Another 2 shows tomorrow, obviously, because that's the vibes that we're on right now. So 1 p.m. UK time and 9 p.m. UK time. And I look forward to talking to you guys tomorrow. Again, support the channel by just liking and subscribing. That really helps. If you want to become a channel member, you guys can. That ensures that your comments are always put up on the screen. And I appreciate all the super chats. I really do. You guys know I love my coffee, a little bit of hot chocolate. I really enjoy those. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. But I will see you guys tomorrow. And yeah, stay safe. Love you guys. Bye.